Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing my Premier League predictions for the 25-26 season. The season's upon us, it's literally a couple of days away as I'm filming this, and this has the potential to be one of the best seasons in Premier League history. And especially in the last 5 years or so, I think we won't see all three of the pro teams go down. There's a little bit of a spoiler for you. So let's get into where I think people will shape up. And again, as you can probably tell by the t-shirt, I'm a West Ham fan. So there might be some West Ham bias here. And also, if your club is low down, it's not reflective on how I feel about your club. I'm not just doing it to banter you. If I did, Tottenham would be at the bottom, and they're not. So keep that in mind as we go forward. In 20th, I have Burnley. And this is entirely down to Scott Parker and also their transfer business. Now, for a bit of clarification, I haven't put everybody in the positions just based on their transfer window. Believe me, I'm a West Ham fan. I've learned from having really good windows and still being very middling. But Burnley, to me, I've not only had a terrible window and signed middle-of-the-road players, but also have Scott Parker as manager. I just don't think Scott Parker's that great of a Premier League manager. People talk about the gulf quality between the Championship and the Premiership and the money being able to spend, but I also think they're two different games. I think to be able to manage the Championship and manage the Premier League is very different. And Scott Parker, to me, is the epitome of that. I think he can do the Championship very well. I think the Premier League, he struggles. And that's just looking at his record. I think the signings they made of Broja and a couple of the others don't inspire me. I just want to see where the goals are going to come from. I think they'll be all right at defending leads. I think you'll see them have like losses of 1 or 2-0. I just don't know where the goals are going to come from. And if I can't see that in your team, I don't see how you're going to stay up. And that's why I've got Burnley at the bottom. In 19th, I have Brentford. And this entirely comes down to not only them losing 2 of their best players and losing your manager Thomas Frank and replacing him with the set piece coach. I just don't think that's a great idea. I just don't think that will help them going forward. I think they will be a bit sluggish and a bit slow. I do think they'll stumble out the blocks. I think that'll be the biggest issue. I think it will take them time to bed in. Yes, they've signed Kelleher and there's on a few other players, but overall, Brentford have been the team that have been building on something. You know, they've had this player come in and this player come in. They've been getting slightly better, and it just feels like they've had the wind kicked out of them. It feels like losing Thomas Frank was the first one. Then losing in Burmo, potentially losing Visser, it becomes a tougher job. And especially when your manager that you got in isn't the seasoned manager. The one positive he has is that he's already been embedded in the squad. That's great. They know him. But overall as a manager, I just don't know if the step up's right. It feels a bit weird. This could be the biggest blinder of all time. This could be one of the worst predictions ever. But I just don't see where Brentford are going to get the goals from. I don't think they made the most savvy signings. And overall, I just don't see where the positivity is in the club, but I do think that they'll be the biggest surprise package if they get above 15th, and I think that's a great effort for everyone involved at the club, considering the people they've lost. At 18th, I've got Leeds. Now, this is a bit similar to Burnley, where I don't know where the goals are going to come from, and I don't like their manager, but I just think it comes down to the stadium. The atmosphere at Ellen Road is fantastic. They do have some better players. I think Ampadu is one of the best players they have, obviously their captain, and someone that's really grown into the squad, but I also think they've got a lot of that factor there still. They've got players that love the club, that are ready to, play for the badge. I'm not saying that Burnley don't have that, but Burnley have gone through a lot of change, whereas Leeds, not so much. I also do think they have the financial backing. While they've not made the best signings, I do think they have potential to make great signings, and that is what's going to happen with Leeds. You'd like to think that if they're struggling come January, they would have the ability to sign players. I think that's something that Burnley won't have. I think Burnley will be stuck in that difficult zone, whereas Leeds will not. And to me, that's why they could be 18th and on the bubble of staying up. For me, Daniel Farke is a big reason that they'll struggle. I just don't think he's a very good Premier League manager. I don't see how he will affect them positively. I don't think he suits the Premier League. Again, Championship, very good manager. Premier League is a different game. And I think you see that in Farke. I think you see that he just struggles to kind of take the step up, to be able to know how to best use his players, how to best set up a system. And overall, it wouldn't surprise me if he's the first manager to go. I never want anyone to lose their jobs. I would really want to, emphasise that. But if there's one manager I think will struggle the most, even over Scott Parker, with Daniel Farke. That rhymed. That was nice. But next up for me and just surviving is Wolves. I think the Molyneux's a great stadium. I think Wolves are great. I think they've got some good players. Yes, they've lost Matheus Cunha, but I like their new manager. I think it worked last season. He did have a positive impact. Yes, more in the first half of his tenure than in the second half. They kind of did start to fall off again a little bit. But they were a decent squad, and I think they'll continue to be. I think they will continue to unearth diamonds in the rough that, yes, may leave them in a couple of years, but that's the system that Wolves were adapted. And I can understand why for their fan base it is a bit of a shame that they kind of just tend to stick in this zone of 17th to 14th every season. But overall, I do think they'll continue to be a Premier League team. I do think they'll continue to survive. And overall, I do think they'll be a solid outfit. And I'm definitely afraid of facing them when it comes to that game in the Carabao Cup for West Ham. 16th, I've got Sunderland. Sunderland, to me, are the teams to watch out for. Though I said I wasn't going to base all of my predictions just on transfer business, and that is true. But there's a vibe around them this season. The players they've made just make your eyebrow raise and go, really? They got him? Fair play. That is the vibe. And I don't know, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know too much about their system and how they've been playing, but I do know the Stadium Light is a difficult stadium to go to. Believe me, when West Ham got that in the first game of the season, I was like, that's going to be a tricky fixture. And I think for all of the other teams, it's going to be a tricky fixture. It doesn't matter whether you're Man United, whether you're Man City, because the fans will be buoyed to see those teams come to the Stadium of Light. It will be a tough place to go. And overall, I just think Sunderland will survive. And overall, I think they should. They are a Premier League team, in my opinion. Yes, they've not been there for that long, but the Premier League feels better with Sunderland in it, and I think overall they will be good enough to survive. Next up, I have Fulham, and 15th might seem low for them. I just don't think they've moved very much in the recent years. I don't think they've done much to improve the squad. They bought Emil Smith-Rowe in last season, didn't seem to do too much. I've not heard too much about their business this window. And overall, Marco Silva's doing a good enough job there. I just think he's got the backing. And overall, I think it'll be a decent season for them. I know 15th isn't great, but I do perceive from 15th to 8th to be really tough. Like, Fulham is a step up from Sunderland. There will be like a 7-point difference, if not more. And I do just think that they will be the ones that start to run out of steam just based on squad depth, just based on the players they already have. And overall, I just don't see much noise coming out of Craven Cottage. I could be wrong though. From 15th to 8th, this could switch around entirely. In 14th, I have Everton. And I'm going to say 2 words, David Moyes, and I mean that in a positive light, because I think their squad is potentially one of the worst in the Premier League at the minute. I think they do need backing. I know they've got Jack Grealish in, and I am getting Jesse Lingard vibes from Jack Grealish. I think that move will be fantastic. I think he will work wonders in a David Moyes system. I think he will be the centre point of that system and work wonderfully. But overall, I just don't think they have any power to go above 14th. You know, even with the likes of Njai, Pickford, Tarkowski, great players in that squad, but overall you get one injury and they're going to crack. I think Moyes football will do them enough to stay up, but I think going forward they'll struggle. And yeah, to me, 14th is not a bad season. Obviously with their new stadium, they probably want higher, and they have potential to get higher, but Moyes needs backing in the window desperately. And Jack Grealish is a great start. In 13th, I've got Nottingham Forest. This could be the crazy prediction of the video. You guys might be like, what on earth are you on about, Alex? This is not a good prediction. And you could be right. However, to me, I think they're just going to struggle. I don't really believe in Nuno. I think he had a good season last year. But overall, I don't know how he's going to be able to follow that on. The business in the window hasn't been superb. It's been okay. They've done some decent stuff. But they also have European football to contend with next season. And it was the Conference League, now it's the Europa League. That's a bit controversial in itself. But there is a big difference between the Europa League and the Conference League. And I don't know how they're going to combine the two. I think the Premier League will suffer. Now, I do think they'll have good runs in the Cups, especially the Europa League. I've seen them getting through the knockout stage, see them doing well. They've kept Morgan Gibbs-White. They've done well to do that, as he almost left for Tottenham, which was almost crazy, wasn't it, in a move? You know, we talk about the pull of certain teams. Even though these new teams come to Europe, it does still seem like the classic teams have more pull. But yeah, for Nottingham Forest, I don't know. Nuno's ever been a manager that sets me alight. I think last season, unfortunately, was, 1 in a million for them. I hope that's not true. I would really like to see some teams stay, but they are. I'm a West Ham fan. I had seasons where I've come 6th, 7th, 8th, and now I'm back down to reality, battling 14th. So I hope that people can buck the trend. We've seen it with Leicester. They won the league and then couldn't repeat that. And I think this will be a similar case where Nottingham Forest will just go back down to earth a little bit, which is a shame. If they want to step in the lofty heights, they've got to invest in the window, and I don't think they've done that to a degree that I like yet to put them in those European places. Now in 12th, I put Bournemouth. I think overall they've done great business in terms of outgoings and how much money they've got in that defence. I've seen some stats how much they paid for it versus how much they got. Great stuff. I really like Iraola as a manager. I think he's been fantastic. I saw them play against West Ham in pre-season. They were really solid. And again, this just comes down to the fine margins, and I just don't see them getting any higher than 12th. I think I could be wrong there. They could make some really good signings, and they are only a couple signings away from being a European club. I do believe that. I do like the stadium. I think when you go down there, when you go down to the Jurassic Coast, it is a tough place to go. But I just don't see them having enough infrastructure to go higher yet. But again, I think they're going to be agonisingly outside of Europe by like 4 or 5 points. It will be that close. In 11th, I've got Crystal Palace. And this position is actually incredibly hell-bent if they keep Guehi and Eze, because that's still up for debate. Even though they're now in the Conference League, which I know is an absolute mess of a situation that's been going on, it's been a bit crazy. One thing I will say is I do think they'll do well in the Conference League. I know Crystal Palace fans are rightly upset they're not in the Europa League because that's what they earned. What I will say is if you are a Crystal Palace fan, I do think you will have a better season in the Premier League and the Conference League. I'm not saying that as you should be happy that what's happened. I'm saying that I do think there'll still be a positive season for Crystal Palace. I put them 11th as, again, I'm a bit worried they'll lose Eze and Guehi. And if they do, I don't know what they do. I don't, because I think those are the two players, not because they're just the best players, but because they're the glue of that club. They have stayed there for so long. They are the players that when you go to Crystal Palace, I assume they're the first people you look at and go, oh, they're in the squad I'd quite like to go. I really like Glasner. I think he's really good. I think he'll be really good in European football. If they keep Guehi and Eze, don't be surprised if they win the Conference League, they finish in the top 10. If they don't, who knows, this could be a tricky season for Crystal Palace. In 10th, this is where I put West Ham. And I've seen people put us low, I've seen some West Ham fans put us high. I'm going right in the middle. I think 10th will be a positive season. I know fans don't like Graham Potter. I'm not even talking in the West Ham affairs, I'm talking overall. I'm a big Graham Potter fan. I'm a Graham Potter defender. I think he's a really good manager. He just had a bad time at Chelsea. And I think what some people who aren't in the West Ham bubble, for lack of a better word, is some players we had last season when we said we won the window didn't perform last season, not only because they didn't perform, but because we were injured. I think having Julian Lopetegui, no matter what squad we had, would not have allowed us to do well in the Premier League, because I don't think Lopetegui is that good of a Premier League manager. Whereas Graham Potter is a good Premier League manager. And there was improvements last season before we had the new players. And yes, I know we got Callum Wilson in, but I do think Kyle Walker-Peters is a good addition. I do think Hermansen's a good addition. I do think Juff is a good addition. We got a Gerd back. We got Freddie Potts. So that's 5 new additions already in. And I know some people say, well, Gerd and Freddie Potts aren't really signings, but they will act like it. I know a player going out on loan doesn't count as a new signing, but to me, it's resetting the board. It's changing who was there last time. There's another defender on. I guess if not to play a straight at the back system, having 4 senior centre-backs at the club is a lot better than having 3. I think overall Fulkrug will be better this season. He does look healthier. He looks lively. Paqueta will be different because he's not got those issues over his head. Some of it will be back playing well. Overall, I think we'll just be alright. You know, there was a couple of signings last season, like Guido Rodriguez, so I think we will move on and we'll just say, look, it didn't work out. I think hopefully we'll see more people like Luis Guilherme. So overall, I do think it'll be a good season. I do think 10th will be good as long as we have a good run in the Cup. You know, I'm not going too hard. I'm not putting us back in Europe. I hope that we can get back in Europe. Again, I do think the battle for 8th and that Europa Conference League spot, in theory, will be quite close. But 9th up at Spurs, don't get me wrong, Thomas Frank is one of my favourite managers in the Premier League. I think he's one of the best. There is a reason that Brentford have stayed up as long as they have, and that man is Thomas Frank. And that's not because the squad's rubbish, but it's how he's changed the squad, how he's moulded the squad in his own image, and he's been fantastic at that. However, that took time. I think the Spurs squad will take time. They've lost Sonny. They've basically lost James Maddison. They've lost their previous manager. They now have to adapt to a new system. And that will take time for Thomas Frank. It's a different environment over at Spurs. They've made some decent signings. Mohamed Kudus from us, I think, will go down as a bad signing. But it's just because I don't think he's the right man for the job. And this could be me being a little bit biased. I'm just not that big of a Kudus fan. And it's not based on the fact he went to Spurs. I just think last season he wasn't great. And he's showing signs of the same errors that he had in last season. They've got some good players. 100% they do. But I think Son leaving the dressing room will be tough on them. I'm not saying it wasn't the right time for Son to go, but it takes time to get that same character fixed, and get the new character that can fill that void, and it'll take time. Overall, don't be surprised if in a season or two's time you see Tottenham back in top 5. That's what I'm saying. This is a long-term project for Frank, and I hope Daniel Levy, not for my sake, but for Tottenham's sake, keeps him there. Even if it's 9th or 12th or wherever, keep Frank there. Give him time to embed his system into the players, and trust me, it'll work out. Next up, I have Brighton 8th. I don't know what it is about Brighton. I don't have much to say. I just think they're really good. I don't know what it is. I just think they're really solid. It's one of those teams that just always tend to do well for no reason. I like their players. I like the manager. It's all good, and there's not been much change. Like that's it. They realistically have stayed the same, and therefore they'll do all right. I don't think it'll be a great season in terms of they don't push on much further, but they're certainly not going to go further back. They are a team that goes from strength to strength each year. Even at small changes, they just tend to do well, and the Amex Stadium is one of my least favourites in the Premier League, just based on the fact that every time we go there, we don't tend to do very well. In 7th, I have Newcastle. Now, I don't know what's going on with Newcastle. I don't know how we got from Isaac wanting to leave, which I understand why he wants to go. Liverpool's a great club to go to. But then Anthony Gordon saying, I hope he gets the move. Lots of players rejecting Newcastle. Yes, they've got some signings, Alanga, Ramsey, great. But they're just not doing well enough, and the whole vibe around the club just feels off. This could come back to be a terrible prediction, right? But Newcastle, I think, will go backwards this season. I don't think it'll be drastic, as some fans think, but I don't think they'll move forward. I think 7th is as high as they can go. I do think they'll get there, though, because I do like Eddie Howe as a manager. In 6th, I'm going to put Aston Villa. I like them. They've done decent business. Unai Emery's great. I think they've done very well at letting the right players go for the right prices and replacing them. But I don't know, none of their signings make me go, yeah, this is going to be a really good season. I just think they'll be solid. I think 6th is a good season for them. Hopefully they do well in all the cups and that sort of thing. And I think that's probably what they're aiming for, is a good run in the cups. I think if they can do that, plus their position in the Premier League, that'd be fantastic. Next I've got Manchester United in 5th, which I know could be crazy. I'm not a Manchester United fan at all, but I just think Amorim's got it. I've seen it in pre-season. I know you can't judge everything by pre-season, and they don't even have the best window. They've signed some good players, but it's not in a drastic window. I just think that the vibe and the feel around the club is different. Benjamin Sesko is different. He's proven. I like Højlund, he's young, he needs to give these players time. I like the fact he wants to step in United and try. But what Amorim's doing is he's getting rid of the fat. He's getting rid of the players that don't want to be there, that are part of the old Manchester United era. He's getting rid of them. He's going, no, we don't want them. And he's getting his own players in. And that's what manager needs to do. It's the same thing. Everyone thought last year Amorim's in, the results are going to change. That doesn't happen. But you can't, you can get a manager to stir up and, shore up a defence or implement their ideas slightly. But if you've got the right players, you can't make a meal if you've got the wrong ingredients. Do you know what? Does that make sense? It's tough. It's the same thing with Graham Potter, right? Last season, West Ham fans are like, we're not really doing much better going forward, but it's because we couldn't really play a system, we didn't have the personnel, we couldn't really work it. But this season, I don't know, I just think everyone likes to go to Manchester United. Having Ruben Amorim there, who's one of the most exciting managers to work under, keeps their pull high. When some fans are going, how are Manchester United getting these players from outside of Europe? It's because A, it's Manchester United, B, it's Ruben Amorim. And I think the vibe on the club is so positive compared to Newcastle. Now, I know Manchester United are doing some not so nice things outside of the football with their staff and their funds and what they're doing. But in terms of the footballing itself, and if you're a footballer, Manchester United is still a really appealing place to go. And it's only going to get more appealing with the players that come in, with Ruben Amorim having a hold there. And I think the way he speaks is really positive for them and the players. So yeah, I think Manchester United could be back in the Champions League again with the coefficient and stuff. I think they could be a Champions League club again, which I'm, again, not buzzing about, but, you can't hate them for getting things in the right place. In 4th, I have Chelsea. Chelsea, to me, is another example of let the manager do his thing. Enzo Maresca, there were a lot of Chelsea fans who were singing his praises for the first half of last season. Then he goes and has a bit of a bad run. And people go, oh, no, we need to get rid of him. He's not quite the player we thought he was, not quite the manager. He's not quite the manager we thought he was. And then he wins the Conference League and he wins the Club World Cup. And people will banter the Conference League, but to win a trophy at a European level is important. They are still high up in the European rankings because of that win. They still have done a good job because of that win. They have got silverware. That is more important than finishing 6th in the Premier League. It's a fact. You would much rather, as a club, finish 12th and get a cup. You would. And I think that's what Maresca did well last season. He slowly built into his squad. He was also a manager that wants to trim the fat, wants to get rid of Jadon Sancho, Raheem Sterling, some of these players. They've got so many players, Chelsea. And for a while, they were just able to continue and roll on. And we've not seen that too much this season. There was a bit of a joke when they got Bino Gittins at the start of the season, and everyone thought, another winger? But there's not been much more of those, silly deals since. He's kind of getting those players he wants. And that's good. I'm happy that we're in this era now where managers are getting a bit more time if there are signs that it could work out. In 3rd, I have Arsenal. I think they'll be in the title race for 3 months and not do anything with it. Gyökeres is a great signing. I just don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the dressing room. I don't know if it's something else. All I know is there is issues that in the mindset, in Arteta's tactics, that come the end of the season, they falter. And it makes no sense because it's happened time and time again. Again, I'm not an Arsenal fan, but this is just as an observer of football. You can see it. So I'm going to put them 3rd. Not much to say about them. I think the signings have been alright. 1 and 2, Liverpool, Man City. It seems like we always come back to this. In 2nd, I've got Manchester City. And I think the main difference is Pep Guardiola's signings seemed like a system change to me. It seems like we're in this golden era of Man City, and now we're slowly in the transition phase of getting out of it. And the signings he's brought in are fantastic. Let's not beat around the bush. In theory, they should work. He's not brought in too many of them. He's got rid of players that aren't going to fit the system anymore. He's not done what Chelsea did and just pile players on top of each other. He got players that he knew would help that system, that he knew would improve that team. One thing that Liverpool has, who are going to win the league, is that they are building a team that is just improving the system they already have. We lose Trent Alexander-Arnold, great, we'll get Frimpong. We want to get rid of Darwin Nunez, great, we'll get Hugo Ekitike and potentially Isak. We'll add Florian Wirtz to our already great midfield. We're losing Kelleher, we'll get Mamadashvili, who is the perfect replacement for Alisson once Alisson is ready to kind of take that second goalkeeper spot. It is a perfect window. Yes, they have places in the team that need fixing, but so does every team in the Premier League. This is a great team, and they will only go strength to strength. So yeah, I do think Liverpool win the league by some margin. I do think it'll be close this season. I think Pep, with the bit between his teeth, I think obviously with Jurgen leaving, that was such an iconic rivalry. And I think last season with Man City falling off just a little bit, there was a bit of a, oh, what's going on here? But I do think Man City will be back to their best. But the question is Man City's best good enough at the minute? I don't think so. I think Liverpool have the ability. I think Arne Slot is the surprise package, but he is so good at what he does. To come into a club like Liverpool, who all thought last season they were going to go on a bit of a downward spiral. One of my best mates is a Liverpool fan, and he was like, yeah, I don't think we're going to do as good as we did under Klopp. They did better. Doesn't mean that I think that Slot has a bigger legacy than Klopp, not yet, but I just think he will win the title back to back. I think it will happen. I don't think it will be as resounding as it was last season. I think it will be tougher, but I think Man City will stumble out the gate just that little bit, which will give Liverpool the edge. But don't be surprised come the end of the season if Man City are the better team in the last 8 or so games. But that is my thoughts, guys. Please let me know in the comments down below what your guys' thoughts are, and remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all very soon. Take it easy and bye bye.